everybody like I did last year, and B, so that the student can make fun of me. I would like to welcome distinguished guests, ARCS faculty members, and CSUN and other faculty members, collaborators, and students to the second year Liftoff of the Center. The Liftoff celebrates the continuation of our journey to the new era of transdisciplinary STEAM-based autonomy research at CSUN. To begin the Liftoff, I would like to introduce CSUN President Dr. Erica Beck to provide a welcoming video message. Joe?
Good afternoon. I am Erica Beck, President of CSUN, and I am delighted to welcome you to the ARCS Year 2 Liftoff. ARCS, or the Autonomy Research Center for STEAM, is CSUN's NASA-launched University Center of Excellence, forging multidisciplinary research collaboration between the S, physical, social, and behavioral science, the T, technology and engineering, E, entrepreneurship and business, A, arts, H, humanities, and M, mathematics. Working collaboratively with JPL and 6 NASA centers, ARCS is taking a leadership role in building a culture of convergence research at CSUN, training students to be innovators, deep thinkers, and researchers to solve society's most pressing challenges. Through a convergence approach, ARCS integrates deeply across academic disciplines, exposing students to a wide variety of stakeholders and perspectives. Currently, more than 150 students and 20 faculty from 7 different CSUN colleges and the university library and experts in industry and science collaborate on 24 NASA industry-supported projects that have broad societal impact. One multifaceted example of the ARCS collaboration with NASA is with the Artemis program, in which NASA will land the first woman and next man on the moon by 2024. Through Artemis, CSUN students are developing their convergence leadership skills and enhancing their career potential. ARCS faculty and students are pursuing 6 different areas of convergence research on this program, dealing with autonomous systems, artificial intelligence, flight operations, space farming, robotic swarming for space exploration and assembly, and the legal and ethical implications. In addition, ARCS is developing Artemis-related toolkits for use in K-12 education. ARCS has increased CSUN's institutional research capacity and has grown beyond aerospace into other research areas, including a project sponsored by Medtronic on social medicine with autonomy. This work studies diabetes and comorbidities in the underserved populations and autonomy for manufacturing with Autodesk, placing CSUN students' teams at the Autodesk Technology Centers. Medtronic embraces convergence research and is committed to working with CSUN students on issues of health equity. And all of this great and exciting research happens right here at CSUN, one of the most diverse universities in the nation. Diversifying the STEM fields is vital for our state and national economies. And not only do we do it, we expose our future engineers to create, explore, and solve from the human condition framework, integrating science into solving social problems. This is critical because as our world rapidly changes, it is imperative that diverse student populations, such as those we are so proud to serve at CSUN, not only have access to STEM courses, but are encouraged and shown clear pathways to pursue STEM careers. The ARCS holistic approach to teaching and learning effectively converges multiple disciplines, bridging social and objective fields, and is central to educating the future leaders who are adept at collaboration and prepared for success in tomorrow's workforce. As president of this extraordinary university, I am proud to say ARCS is a model for colleges and universities seeking to educate and train historically underserved and underrepresented students in the pursuit of their career aspirations in STEAM fields and increasingly autonomous systems. Through research and internships, ARCS is training a diverse and inclusive population of 21st century leaders who can solve our most urgent technological and social challenges. All of us here at CSUN are grateful for the tremendous opportunity created by ARCS and the invaluable support of our partners, including NASA JPL, Glenn Research Center, Kennedy Space Center, Armstrong Flight Research Center, Ames Research Center, Langley Research Center, and Stennis Space Center, as well as Medtronic and Autodesk. Again, thank you everyone for being here today, and congratulations to the ARCS team on a successful Year 2 liftoff. Good afternoon.
Thank you for President Beck's message. Next, I would like to ask Provost Maribeth Walker to share her thoughts. Maribeth?
Well, thank you for inviting me. Please take my picture off though, okay? But thank you so much for inviting me to celebrate this with you. I've been more than impressed with the work that's happened at ARCS over this past year. I know this was one of the first opportunities that came to me when I first got here almost 2 years ago now. And I was, I didn't know Newt, I didn't know everybody. This was very ambitious plans for this center. The all-encompassing, the deep interdisciplinarity of this work. I was a little concerned about how this would actually pan out. Well, my gosh, I did not need to be concerned about it. Now I'm concerned about how big is it going to get, right? Because I love to see everyone's engagement in this. I would echo what President Beck said about the deep importance of this work here. And, I applaud the work that you're doing, and I just can't wait to see what's going to happen next. So thanks for having me, Newt.
Thank you so much for your support, Provost Walker.
Thank you. And now I'd like to bring Newt back to give us a year 1 reflection and introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Joe. This past year has been challenging for our students, faculty members, and community. But in my view, for ARCS, this past year has also been a story of character building and resiliency, a stories of inspirations, and most importantly, a story of community and humanity. We had the Liftoff, our grand opening event on February 27, 2020 to launch our research projects. And immediately after that, with the pandemic and lockdown, like everyone else, we went into replanning to adjust the scope of our projects, revise the way we do research, and access to facilities for our student faculty. What I never imagined is that a year later, ARCS would grow to be twice as big. We grew from 10 research projects to 20 plus projects with collaborators from NASA and industry, from 10 professors to 20 professors, and expanded from 3 research areas: trustable autonomy, human-machine teamwork with explainable AI, and social and moral autonomy, to include 4 new research areas in autonomy for social medicine, autonomy for manufacturing, autonomy in law, legal analyses, and autonomy literacy. We involved 150 plus students in research project, got 9 additional research grants, and placed students in remote internship and competition at JPL and NASA. ARCS and its partner has taken this crisis and use it as an opportunity to build character, to grow, and to inspire. I'd like to share some of those inspirational stories. Ashley Santiago, art student fellow, and was the first student ever from the art department to get an internship at JPL as a designer and artist for the International Global Navigation Satellite System project at NASA JPL. Sakis Mikelian, arts fellow and a computer science, and his team was selected as one of the 20 finalists for the NASA Spacesuit User Interface Technology for Students Artemis Challenge to develop spacesuit information display with an augmented reality environments to assist astronauts doing spacewalks. Michael Baumgarten, arts fellow and a veteran, was admitted into the PhD program in anthropology at Arizona State University with full financial support. Fadhil Jintin, arts first pre-doctoral fellow, was admitted into the PhD program in aeronautics and astronautics at Stanford University. Our students are a source of inspiration, and we're very, very proud of them. Please give a round of applause or a Zoom reaction to our students. In the backdrop of all arts accomplishment and inspiration, I believe there's also a story of community and humanity. Arts sustain a sense of community with our Make Arts and Home initiative that includes monthly night games and bi-weekly research seminars and presentation that engage our students. And the humanity aspect of it, I think is best captured when Arts had a watch party for the landing of the Mars rover Perseverance and Mars helicopter Ingenuity that included a 1-hour Q&A with Dr. Scott Davidoff, manager of the user design and research at NASA JPL, that many of our students attended. And at this watch party, we yelled in jubilation and we broke down in tears when the control room said Perseverance is alive. It was a beautiful moment. ARCS exceeded its goals in year one. I would like to express our most sincere appreciation for the support from our former President Harrison, our new President Beck, Provost Walker, our deans, the Research and Sponsored Project Office, the University Corporation, colleges, 7 colleges across campus, and the NASA Mirror Office, collaborators at NASA and JPL, industry partners, community college, and university partners. And lastly, we couldn't have done it without the hard work and dedication of art staff, faculties, and students. And thank you all. Joe. Next, I would like to introduce David McBride to provide an opening speech for our event. I really appreciate David's commitment to education, to the underserved student population that we have at CSUN. ARC was born because of the encouragement of Armstrong leadership a few years ago to encourage me to apply for a grant to establish ARCS and to make it what it is today. And the many numerous student success that we have through the collaboration with NASA Armstrong. And David has been instrumental in guiding us in that direction and making things happen. And we are forever appreciate his effort, his dedication to our students. Now I will turn over to David.
"2020 is the year of perfect vision." We've got a lot going for us this year.
The roaring 20s are here. I feel like I'm living in a science fiction novel.
We're looking forward to supporting these science campaigns, studying the Earth's atmosphere. There's nothing like getting up there where you can look out over the distance and see the curvature of the Earth. We love a challenge, we love to learn, we love to explore.
We essentially are using the moon as a benchmark so that Earth-observing satellites can turn and look at the moon and set the scale on the amount of light they're measuring from the Earth.
H65, increase your speed 10 knots. Terminate.
Good encounter on that one.
It's pretty cool. Like, we're venturing into newer technologies. X-57 is better for the environment.
The vibration level mimics what the controller will see in the aircraft.
It shows that our design is robust enough to meet the standards of flight.
These are our space-rated versions of our fiber optic technology.
These operate on PWM.
Keep going, keep going.
Nobody in the world is doing what we're doing.
First off, I want to thank everybody for the level of productivity we still maintain. We're going to get over this. We're tough people. We can do this.
There were incredible similarities between the oxygen we have to provide to a pilot and the oxygen we have to provide to a patient.
I'm extremely proud of how our engineers were able to use what they had available in their garage and be able to build systems that might help a lot of people.
That's what engineers do. We solve problems.
And that's who NASA is. The best and the brightest that America has.
There's not that much good news, and I think this is one of those things that is universally good, no matter where you are. This day heralds a new age of space exploration.
activate payload.
Success.
Tipping Point is a payload that we've been working together between Blue Origin and NASA. It's tied into the work that we're doing in terms of getting NASA and America back to the moon.
What we're hoping to be able to do is to put this collection of knowledge out there so that companies can start to understand, how do I design an airplane to be able to handle these kinds of things?
As I try to steer it to the left back towards the intruders, it continues to avoid.
If we can provably control flutter instability modes past the flutter boundary, this would allow us to use lighter weight, more flexible structures like those seen on the X-56.
NASA Armstrong has a lot of cool projects. I mean, every day you learn something new, fun and exciting.
It's exciting to work on something that could really benefit our nation.
Okay, am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. for the introduction, Dr. Ho. From the video, you can see some of the exciting work that has continued to happen at NASA Armstrong. And I want to thank you, President Beck and Provost Walker, for the invitation to speak here today. I'm very pleased with the progress ARCS has made this past year. And from what you can see, and I hope the presentation I'm going to leave behind that you can download, and the video spark some ideas in the students for different ways to apply the autonomy research you are doing to help solve NASA's problems. Joe, could you go ahead and bring up my presentation? And these charts will be available. I won't go through all the charts here, but hopefully it sparks some ideas in the participants on places where you can apply the autonomy work going on in ARCS, and how Armstrong has been an innovator and leader in the autonomy, in the innovation in autonomy from our beginning, starting 75 years ago this year. So go to the next chart. Most people are familiar with NASA, and I'm glad to see that we've got 6 NASA centers and JPL involved and invested in ARCS and seeing progress there. Obviously, we're the closest center to the Northridge campus. We're up at Edwards Air Force Base in Palmdale, so we're within an hour or 2 hours from the campus, easily accessible to you. Let's go to the next chart. Our mission is advancing technology and science through flight. We do that by performing technology research and integration, validating space concepts, and conducting airborne research like you saw in the video. The Traveler little vehicle here is something that's has a direct connection to CSUN. We have one of our interns, Sarkis McKellian, who's now, I think, accepted a full-time position at Armstrong as a NASA employee, helped develop a hierarchical autonomous system framework for the vehicle under the EVA program, and that's going to be in one of the breakout sessions. The EVA is the expandable variable autonomy architecture. It's for both space and civil applications. So there's direct connections, and we're very pleased with the level of effort coming out of CSUN and the applicability. If you can go to the next chart. our purpose in flight research is to separate the real from the imagined and make known the overlooked and unexpected. This is a saying, a quote from our previous NACA administrator and first deputy administrator for NASA. And the meaning there is, in our world of flight, nothing really is validated until it's actually proven in flight. And that's where we'd like to work with you to take your theories, take your ideas, and prove that they work in a real world, real environment with the tools that we have available, with your skills and your capabilities. So if you go to the next chart. And our vision is to separate the real from the imagined through flight. And so when we look at what we've done at our center over the years in enabling autonomy, it's really encapsulated in a lot of the things here. For aircraft control, we need to have a way to control the aircraft in flight, to get the autonomous inputs or any machine-derived inputs into the vehicle to control that flight. And everything you see in here in some of these historical pictures, the X-15 illustrated some of the first stability augmentation systems worked on that allowed for better ride control, but getting inputs from the pilot and augmenting them with machine inputs, and also the first generation of command augmentation. So not having a pulley and cable tied to a control surface, but taking electronic inputs from a pilot and turning that into flight commands. The Lunar Lander Research Vehicle, truly the first digital fly-by-wire vehicle in the world, and that enabled us to take human pilot commands, turn that into a desired operation, and let a computer decide what to do, which then enabled the FAA digital fly-by-wire, which was the first true digital fly-by-wire using the computers that were developed for the Apollo program. And back during the Apollo program, NASA used 25% of the entire world's computer chip capacity in the world. So we were a big player in getting computer industry going, the digital flight control system world going. And then that led to full authority digital flight control systems as illustrated with the X-29. So there's a lot in our history there that illustrates our capability and commitment to turning autonomy into a reality. And on the next chart shows some of the things we continue to work on, and back up one chart, and places where the ARCS can get more engaged. And we saw that in the video with resilient autonomy. Advanced air mobility is the next generation of urban transports, which will allow us to move people within an urban environment. All of that will require autonomy, the terrain relative navigation, which I'll talk to in a little bit. But all of these certainly do have a role for ARCS involvement. And I'm not getting too specific because there's a lot that we don't know what we need in the future. And that's where ARCS and your students and your innovations are really going to help humanity in the future. And the next chart, I talk a little bit about what NASA does in aeronautics. And although most of the nation considers NASA a space agency and focuses on human space flight and space exploration, truly the biggest impact NASA has on everybody's lives is our involvement and our improvements in the aerospace, the aviation system, the commercial civil transportation system. And so what you can do there is help us make improvements there. And go to the next chart. By developing the systems that will allow us to develop vehicle and airspace management technology to enable that urban air mobility, the urban air taxi services. That's there's a lot of room for improvement there, a lot of room for innovation. Advanced, highly effective electric aircraft. That's the future of flight. If you think of a flying Tesla, propulsion systems need to lower the cost, noise, and emissions for commercial aviation. And that brings together everything you're doing in ARCS, technology, energy, taking care of the planet, and brings in the humanities aspect of how to do these vehicles in a way that protects life on the ground. We're talking about the moral compass that'll help guide aircrafts in distress. If you go to the next chart, some of the things we're working on today that could involve your students is the low boom flight demonstrator. It's being built right now in Lockheed Martin Skunk Works facility in Palmdale, California. And it should wrap up manufacturing this year with flight next year. And the goal there is to demonstrate quiet supersonic flight over land. And here's again an area where the humanities aspect of ARCS gets involved. Although this vehicle will dramatically reduce the sonic boom impact to populations on the ground, it probably will not reduce it to zero. So here's an opportunity to map out areas where supersonic flight should be allowed to fly over land in a way that impacts the least amount of population and has the greatest impact to society. On the next chart, you can see some of the aspects of the vehicle. Go one more chart. And that shows some of the aspects of the vehicle there. So it's a purpose-built vehicle to demonstrate that we understand the dynamics of and the mechanism, the control laws, and the models that will enable quiet supersonic flight over land for the first time in a transport aircraft since the Concorde. On the next chart brings up some of the work we're doing with ultra-efficient subsonic transport work. An electric aircraft, again, like I said, a flying Tesla. The X-57 is looking to get a 5 times energy reduction. On the next chart shows you a different aspect of the view of the aircraft. Oh, go one more chart. I think I sent you the full stack. This one here. You can see the vehicle has 12 leading edge propellers that enable high gain flight over overpopulated areas for short takeoff, but it also enables us to control noise. Again, an area for humanity's impact to the ARCS to look at how autonomy can help prevent or enable this type of transport over a dense populated area. Let's skip ahead a few charts here to let me skip there. In the next generation commercial aircraft, we're starting the process now of developing the next generation subsonic transport aircraft. Think of a replacement for a 737. Although this vehicle will have great energy and emissions improvements due to its shapes, materials, and aerodynamic concepts involved, there's a lot of room for autonomy in how the airplane flies. And what I mean by that, in optimizing the climb trajectories, optimizing flight path, interference with other traffic, optimizing how it engages with the air traffic system, optimizing how the aircraft comes in and lands in a mixed traffic environment, and does that without or while integrating all the rest of the traffic. So by reducing the amount of time in flight or by better integrating traffic in flight, there's lots of room for improvements in fuel efficiency and impacts to the environment. The next chart shows some of the autonomous systems, and you'll get some inputs in the breakout session. One of the greatest autonomous system achievements we've had in the last few years, is by winning the Collier Trophy for the automatic ground collision avoidance system, developed and fielded in an F-16, but it's a fully autonomous system intended to prevent controlled impact to the ground, which is the largest cause of death in commercial transport now. And we did that work in a high performance aircraft, but it is greatly or is very transportable to a commercial civil application as well. We continue to make progress in that with small handheld UAVs. Although the work was initially done on a high performance jet, it is something that has great potential for societal impact and saving lives and making the next generation aircraft even safer than they are today. Next chart. Our involvement in earth science. Let's go to the next chart. It illustrates what we're doing in earth science at Armstrong. We need to care for the earth. We need to understand the earth. And so the work we're doing at Armstrong looks at weather, atmosphere, climate variability, the earth's surface and interior, water, energy, and carbon cycles, and how they impact the total ecosystem of the earth and atmospheric composition. The work we're doing there is not necessarily connected to autonomy, but there is a lot of room for autonomy in reducing data. The work that NASA does across the agency in earth science produces petabytes of information, and we need better ways, autonomous ways to analyze that data, make sense of all that we're gathering so we can better understand the earth and help influence policy toward the climate and how we can make this a better place going in the future. We need to use the work we're doing in aerospace, in civil transport to reduce carbon input into the atmosphere, into the Earth's ecosystem. But we also need to understand how those inputs into the system are being felt by the planet itself. Let's go to the next chart. We're engaged in a human spaceflight in a very small way. We did the launch abort system, the ejection system, if you will, for the Orion crew capsule. And let's go to the next chart. It shows a great way where autonomy is. There's a lot of room for autonomy and a lot of room for involvement in the ARCS team. On the next chart, we show some of the programs that have been flying with the Flight Opportunities portfolio. And I'm glad Dr. Ho mentioned the Mars Perseverance landing party you did. On the next chart, it shows some of the technologies that we developed in the Flight Opportunities program that really enabled that. Totally had to be autonomous because of the time delays in communication transmission from the Earth to Mars and back. But in that landing party, if you were listening carefully on the approach to landing at the final critical stage of the landing, it talked about the terrain relative navigation system and the lander vision system, which allowed the vehicle to autonomously select a landing site on the surface of Mars and find a location close to where they wanted to be in the first place. So great applications of the work we're doing at NASA Armstrong and its ability to influence and successfully land a vehicle on another planet. And great work. We also tested the radar proximity sensors that were used as inputs to the initial and the directed when and where the heat shield should be ejected. That's work that we've done in our high performance F-18 aircraft. Next chart. And Sophia is the last thing I wanted to talk about. Although not, again, like Earth science, there's not a lot of autonomous systems in the aircraft, but we are using autonomous systems to keep us pointed at our targets in the sky. So go to the next chart. Sophia is used to fly above the atmosphere and study the birth of stars, look into the dust, into the cold part of the solar system that we can't see through, except in the infrared spectrum, used as a chemistry lab for cosmic events, and used as a tool to map the magnetic flows through galaxies. So a very cool tool, again, producing petabytes of data every day, trying to analyze the cosmos, trying to understand how stars form, where we came from, and what our ultimate destiny is. Go to the next chart. The type of chemistry that's happening there is the ability to understand from flight in the atmosphere of Earth, the atmospheric composition of Pluto's atmosphere as we can see it from here. Go to the next chart. So let's see, I think I want to end there. Let me go one more chart with the test infrastructure to give you an idea of what we have available for you as students and faculty in working with the NASA Armstrong Flight Research Center. Again, these charts are available to you. The next few charts, you can just skip through those, Joe, if you would. Talk about our capabilities and aircraft that we have available for flight on this chart, from low and slow turboprop airplane to out to beyond Mach 2, aircraft that can fly up to above 70,000 feet and near the ground as small UAVs. So on the next chart is my closing chart. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to help kick off this year's event and hopefully spark some ideas from you, the students and faculty at CSUN, on how you can use ARCS and help us solve problems that we don't even know we need to solve right now. That is our key to the future. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. We were going to have a Q&A, but I think we're going to go ahead and segue directly to our next session here. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll be happy to find a time to answer them maybe during the breakout sessions. But thank you again, David. Appreciate you taking the time to spend your afternoon and be with us. I want to introduce Brittany Oates and Dr. Suzanne Scheld, who will then provide insight into the next segment here, which is our panel, Women in STEAM panel. So Britt and Suzanne, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for organizing this event. I'm going to give a brief introduction, and then we'll introduce our panelists. And we're so glad that everyone is here. And we really thank the panelists for making time today for this really fun liftoff. So I just want to say that CSUN's ARCS community is all about inclusivity. Typically, we speak of STEAM as representing the coming together of science, technology, engineering, and math. But in ARCS, we take an all-embracing approach. We redefine the term as STEAM to signal the welcome of additional disciplines into the fold. In the ARCS community, you can feel the vibe of creativity that's fostered by this holistic approach to thinking about the world. Just as inclusivity is central to the disciplines of ARCS, inclusivity is important to our vision of people in STEAM fields. And we see these fields as open to everyone. And I want the students here to know that this means you. ARCS faculty are expecting to see you in a STEAM field in the near future. There's a place for you in it. You belong. Don't you forget it. That said, STEAM fields are undergoing transition. And today we'll look at this through one of many important lenses to consider, namely the lens of gender. So here's a point of reference. In the 1970s, only 38% of the American workforce was comprised of women. 8% of the STEAM workforce at that time were women. Now, approximately half of the workforce is comprised of women today, and they hold 27% of the jobs in STEM fields. So women of color are significantly underrepresented in these fields across the board. In short, some progress has been made, but there's still more to do. But as STEAM fields are marked by individuals who are motivated to reach higher, individuals who strive to improve ideas, and who are dedicated to making the experience of being human all the more better. The future is bright and change is happening, and we can participate in it. So that's what we hope to think about today with our panelists. So today we'll gain some insight into the work that's ahead in terms of contributing to diversifying STEAM fields. So please join me in welcoming today's panelists. We will quickly, briefly introduce everyone and then dive right into the questions. I would like to introduce and thank Ann Devereaux, who is the Division Manager for STEAM Systems Engineering and IT for NASA JPL. And she has experience as a lead flight systems engineer, and she has worked on configuring mission functionality as it relates to spacecraft subsystems. Devereaux received her BA in electrical and electronics engineering from MIT, along with a master's in science from University of Southern California. And she grew up near Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and where she discovered a passion for space exploration and venturing into the vast unknown. Today, she continues to pursue her passion at JPL through various boundary pushing exploration projects. Thank you for coming, Ann.
And our next panelist is Dr. Rebecca Gottlieb, Vice President of Research and Development for Medtronic, a global leader in medical technology dedicated to making groundbreaking medical advances in over 150 countries. A 20-year veteran at the company, Rebecca is responsible for the long-range technology vision across the diabetes group. In 2015, Rebecca was inducted into the Bakken Society. That's the highest technical award at Medtronic, exemplifying technical leadership and innovation, integrity, and the Medtronic mission. Rebecca currently holds 60 provisional and issued patents and has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and a doctorate in bioengineering from the University of Pittsburgh.
Next is Dr. Elena Miranda, who joined the Department of Geological Sciences at CSUN in 2006. As a Hispanic woman in STEM, she recognizes the unique opportunity and responsibility to be a visible mentor and agent for change in the field. She was recently honored at CSUN's Outstanding Faculty Award, woohoo, in recognition of her teaching, research, and service accomplishments, promoting change in STEM. She has developed nearly 20 courses from GE to graduate level courses, and she's raised nearly $1 million in grant funding since she's arrived at CSUN. She's a leader of CSUN's Latinx Faculty Advocacy Group, a founding member of Southern California Earthquake Center's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, and has been an invited speaker at UCLA's Center for Diverse Leadership in Science. Welcome today, Elena.
And our next panelist is an esteemed colleague and dear friend of mine, actually, Devin Waller. As the Air and Space Exhibit Project Manager, Devin oversees the development and installation of science exhibits for the California Science Center. She's helping to develop the new Samuel Ocean Air and Space Center, which will feature Space Shuttle Endeavour displayed in launch configuration. Super cool. Before joining the Science Center in 2012, Devin worked as a science research analyst on 2 active NASA-funded missions, the Mars Exploration Rover mission and the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter mission. Devin's a passionate science communicator holding degrees in planetary geology and astrophysics. And not only having done extensive science research, she's worked as a post-production coordinator with Warner Brothers Entertainment, serving as a consultant for the science fiction TV show Invasion. Welcome, Devin. Welcome again to all of our amazing panelists. It's such an honor to have you all here with us today.
You're still on.
So with that, we'll go ahead and jump right in. I'll kick things off with our first question. So I'm going to start off with Ann. The question here we'd like to ask is, when did you first realize you had a passion for STEM, or in this arena, STEAM?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having me here. So I didn't realize I had a passion for STEAM until actually I met the great folks at CSUN, and I realized my STEM passion has always been a STEAM passion. And I'll tell you a story that I didn't realize until I had the STEAM context. So I grew up near the Space Center in Florida. When I was a kid, we actually got off school when they would have launches, and I see these launches and they're beautiful. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. I totally want to do this. And it was something that moved me from an emotional level, not so much like, well, I like to build things, which I actually really do too. But I was really emotionally moved by that. And it kind of shows you the power of that sort of thing. And the thing that I tell when people say, well, why didn't you work at Kennedy? That's my family is all there. When I would see these beautiful pictures of like Neptune and what have you, the pictures, really resonated with me so much. And then when I saw the caption of them, at the time, they would say NASA JPL. And so me as a kid in Florida going to school, I would see that and I'm like, I don't even, I hate to say we did not have the internet then, but I was like, that's the place I want to go, because they make these pictures, like they make these images for people. And so that, I mean, even from a young age, I like to build things. I like answers to things. So I was really more to the, engineering and science domain, but it was this evocative sense of humanity in the launches, and then these beautiful pictures that showed you, the potential of outer space. That's what got me excited. And that's really what has driven my career since then.
Wonderful, wonderful. Would any other of our panelists like to add to that?
Sure, I'll say I had something similar where, my family was not a science family. So I really didn't know about STEAM or STEM. My dad didn't finish high school and he became a newspaper printer like his dad. And my mom was a typist who became a secretary. So no science anywhere, but I did like science in school and especially physics. I think that was so interesting to me. And, the college aptitudes test told me that I should maybe go into accounting, that might be good. So I took economics, did not like it. It didn't even make sense to me. And, I found my way into mechanical engineering over, kind of drifting through a number of majors at the time. But, at that point, what really influenced me was also getting a part-time job because I had to work to kind of feed myself, I guess, but getting a job with an MD PhD student. And so my job was to program a mechanical valve to mimic an arterial pulse pressure. That was where I think I found my destiny. Like, this is amazing. And it turned out that to me, the human body is the greatest machine that we're still figuring out today. So that's what led me into bioengineering. I stayed on for grad school and that was that.
Amazing. Very, very cool. Such an adventure, right? Suzanne, would you like to take it from here?
This is a question for Elena, who I'm looking for in my Hollywood squares here. What kind of challenges have you faced in your career and how have you overcome them?
Oh, that's a big one. So let me start with first just a little bit of background about me to put it into context. I'm a Hispanic woman. I'm a third generation in the US citizen. I did not come from a science family. My grandparents, one of them didn't finish the 8th grade and my grandmother finished high school. My grandfather was a painter. And my mom and her brothers and sisters grew up in the Central Valley in California outside of Fresno. So science was not, it wasn't on the forefront of careers. My grandparents were first gen in the country. And so there were two occupations when you're a new immigrant, doctor and lawyer. And those were the only things that were really valued. And so that was really pushed on my mom's generation. That didn't really happen for them. So I'm the first person in my family to have a PhD. I was really interested in science. I grew up in Richmond, California, outside of the San Francisco Bay Area and the East Bay. So any East Bay people here, I'm your people. I grew up at a time, when the Challenger missions, the space shuttles were, going up. So I was very inspired by all of that. But the point is that I was very green. I did not know going through college, the sort of unwritten curriculum and the secret handshakes. I didn't know about, that people were taking practice SAT tests when they were 12 years old. I didn't know what an Ivy League institution was. I'd never heard that language. And so even though my mom and her brothers and sisters and like that, they all went to college. And so I'm technically not first gen in college. I sure felt like it. I remember so many times feeling like, why is everything in Latin? I could see these words, but I'd never heard them spoken in my family. So I didn't want to say them out loud because it would reveal that I didn't know. So the challenges that I had were trying to navigate the university, being like more or less first gen in college and definitely first gen in graduate school. I have a bachelor's degree and a PhD and no master's. I got a tenure track job offer out of my PhD and I have no postdoc. So I have like 2 degrees. And by the time I was in my tenure track position, I had to know how to do these things and master them and do them well because there was no time to screw it up. So I spent a lot of time being very nervous about that. And I think I was also affected by the leaky pipeline phenomenon. I wasn't pushed out, but I was ever so gently steered down. Mm-hmm. And the leaky pipeline sometimes pushes people out, but it alters the trajectory of careers. I think I'm doing a very different thing than I might have done had I been born in a different body with a different skin color. And so the leaky pipeline phenomenon to me is just, 1,000 little points of how about this, or this is more appropriate to you, or try this, or just being steered down. And so overcoming those challenges to define my own goals, find the mentors that were actually giving me advice that was in my best interest and not in their best interest. And that took a long time to learn how to do that. Just navigating bias and barriers that exist. I could see people around me that had sort of straighter paths without things thrown in their way, and I had to jump over that. So those were extremely challenging to overcome. So I'm not sure I overcame all of it. I know I'm very rare. There were 4 PhDs in the earth sciences in 2006 when I graduated of Mexican American females in the country. 4.
Wow.
And I'm 1. So I'm a full professor, and there really aren't statistics for people like me. So in some ways, like, yes, I'm a success story. I overcame those challenges, but I know that trajectory was altered along the way. So the way that I overcame it was just, I never gave up. I am just not the horse you bet against. I never gave up, even when I was exhausted. I learned to find mentors that were culturally appropriate, that not only could help me steer through, but knew what challenges would be put in my way. And other mentors that did not have the same barriers, did not know of their existence. It's not that it was like bad advice, it's just that their experience is different than mine. So having those multiple perspectives was also very key in overcoming that leaky pipeline phenomenon to get to where I am today.
Absolutely. Devin, would you like to add to any of the previous questions regarding, and I have a special question that I'd like to ask you as well, but just thinking in terms of, your own experience as far as realizing when you had a passion for STEM or STEAM in this arena and the kinds of challenges you faced throughout your career as well. Would you like to add to any of that?
Sure. I can relate to a lot of what was said, and I appreciate all of what Elena actually just shared with all of us. I had a passion for STEAM at a young age, but I think my biggest hurdle and challenge throughout my entire career, education and career, has been to overcome my own self-doubt. It's like I have a similar kind of upbringing. My parents got divorced when I was very young. My father, he graduated from high school, and my mom went back to school, and she did get her a graduate degree while I was in school. So we kind of got our degrees at a similar time. And, she did instill in me a lot of support in a way of, it doesn't matter, what you want to do, just go for it and just believe in yourself. And the big thing is imposter syndrome. I learned about it while in school, which is how I hear a lot of people do. And I remember sharing with a good friend of mine who was just like, I don't feel like I fit. I look around the classroom and I don't see anybody that looks like me. I have an undergrad in astrophysics, and so it was really hard for me to really believe that I belonged there and I deserved the seat that I was in. It took me a while to find my voice and really continue, but it's a lifelong process. There are days where I still have that little voice where I have to remind myself, just go for it. Just, ride the passion. And so along with the intellectual part of learning, it's also that emotional part of learning, the passion that you have for STEM and STEAM and whatever it is that you really want to see yourself doing. That's actually what I did, what I honed in on those moments of worry and doubt, where it's like, what, regardless of what I do, how well I do it, I'm going to try my best and just figure out ways to, meet those goals. And if I get there, it'll be a wonderful thing. But if I don't, I tried my hardest to get there. And so I recognize those same feelings, and I appreciate what you said.
These are really good stories and really good food to think with, food for thought. I want to go back to Ann and then also to Rebecca to ask a similar question about challenges. What kinds of challenges have you faced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even as I have, obviously we have different life experiences here on the panel, the whole, looking around and not seeing people that look like you. Like I think Devin was just talking, I was picturing when I was in, some of the big classes when I was an undergrad, and there'd be 100 people in the room, like huge auditorium. And literally I would sit there and I would count the number of women, and maybe there was 3 or 4. I mean, some of the classes I did electrical engineering, and that was even, and I did computer engineering, and that was even at the time, it's better. But I mean, there'd be just a few people. And certainly when the imposter syndrome thing, when I got to work, and so I have a story when I first came to work that I had 2 male office mates, and they were super sweet guys, really nice, but they were laughing when I got there. And I said, well, what's the deal? And he said, well, until I got there, they had this swimsuit calendar on the wall. And every month when it was time to flip the calendar, the manager, like the overall manager, the section manager, so of 100 people, he would come in and a few of the other guys, and they would play some music or something, and they would flip the calendar. And so apparently when I was coming, the administrator, who of course was a woman, because you could be a woman administrator, just not a woman engineer. She came in and she says, well, you guys are going to have to stop that. There's a young lady that's going to be in here, and you guys are going to have to take it. And they all thought this was hilarious. And so for like the first, couple of months, all I could think of is, well, I'm the one that made them take down their calendar. And I actually felt bad that they had to take down their calendar. Like, what a terrible person I am. So it's just kind of things like that. I will say, kind of on the, fear of, not being, not doing the right thing and whatever. I had another terrible boss, but one day I came in and I had some problem, something had come up, and he looked at me and he says, so what are you going to do now? Are you going to quit? And I was like, well, no, I just needed some help on this. He says, well, what do you think the answer is? And I'm like, well, I think and so even though that wasn't like the best way to do it, he was really like, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with solutions. And sometimes that's not actually true, but it really made me think, okay, well, how do I push through this? How do I keep going? And so I think in some sense that, I got this thing about, the only real failure, I mean, Elena talking about, pushing through, the only real failure is when you get yourself in a box and you're like, well, I guess I'm done. I guess I'm quitting because there's nothing more I can do. Like, there's always something you can do, and just really keeping that forward, pushing through both technical problems and life problems. I don't always do that. We're not always successful. Sometimes problems really are, really profound, but just having that attitude, I think that's what makes anybody successful. But I mean, especially, in the STEAM environment where, diversity has not been, a prime factor. I think you really have to look out for yourself.
Thank you.
So I will build off all of that, because I feel like we've all had very similar experiences. When I started my first job after getting my PhD, it was out here in California. So I moved across the country, super excited. It was a startup company. I was like, all right, this is where I'm going to make my mark. And it was within the first week or so after I was starting, there was somebody in the office who walked up and handed me some papers and asked me to fax this to someone, because I think he thought I was the office assistant. So I was like, actually, no. So we probably all had situations like that. But in terms of working through things and, discussion of, what really resonated with me, with what people talked about already, is the imposter syndrome. I think we have all felt that. I mean, I know I have as well, that you really, it takes so long to get over it. And even as successful as you become, there's still that little bit that's always there. So for all of you knowing that, even those of us who have really gone to what looks like incredible success to everybody else, there's still that bit. So ignore it. Figure out a way for you to get past it. And it's really hard. It does kind of chip away at you if you let it. So a couple things, knowing that if you're afraid of failure is actually one of the best ways to learn. And I think every project that I've had doesn't always go forward and make it out to the marketplace and is a huge success. There are many things along the way that just because something doesn't work, and it might not because the business situation, maybe the technology was great, but the business situation says, no, we're not going to go forward. You learn so much along the way. In fact, I would say you learn more from those little failures than you do from success. You might not realize why you were successful, but you definitely realize why a project failed. And I guess what I've also found is that in the end, you are more oftentimes than not judged on how you handled the situation along the way, handled the journey, rather than just that single outcome. So people are watching you, as you're showing your potential, and, they're watching what you do, and they'll look at how you handled it. So make sure you keep that in mind. Even if something isn't going right, make sure you try and do the best that you can, and that will show.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. When you are all kind of giving your accounts and speaking, it just kind of reminded me of the Nike slogan, just do it, right? And that's what we have to do. I love it. So I'd like to kick this over to Devin and ask, and then we'd like to hear from the rest of the panel on this as well, but we'll start off with Devin. Just drawing on your experience, what sort of advice would you give to someone thinking about pursuing a career in STEM, or in this case, STEAM? And this is also piggybacking off of what Rebecca just talked about as well. But what would you say to that?
I would agree with exactly what Rebecca said. Just go for it. Now I say that. I say that. But I also say, when you go for it, come up with a sound plan, think through it thoroughly, go into it with intention. And so don't hold yourself back. And whatever the saying is, where it says, give yourself a real chance. Don't take yourself out of the game before it begins, right? So generate your pros and cons list, talk through, what the options are. Talk with friends and family, find a mentor, somebody who has gone through it before if you have any doubts, if you have any questions. You have to weigh your odds, but go for it. There's no reason not to. A lot of the time people take themselves out of situations before anybody else even has a chance to say anything. And so, like I said, when I was a kid, I was fascinated by science, and it was because of these little sparks that I would have, these little magical moments. When I was in 5th grade, quick anecdote, my teacher, Mrs. Parsons, she was teaching us solar system science. It's all the fundamentals, basic stuff, and about the solar system. And I just remember that magical moment where she talks about Saturn, and she says, if you can pluck Saturn out of its orbit and place it in a basin big enough to hold it filled with water, it would float. And I mean, mind blown, right? So of course, when you're in 5th grade, you may or may not know all of the physics and chemistry that goes along with, what the actual truth of the matter is. But my gosh, if that wasn't a magical moment. And I remember as a child, just having these moments, and they were across disciplines. They would be little chemistry moments outside in the backyard, or with friends, and little engineering moments where I would pretend to be something. And as I got through high school and into, as I started to really solidify, well, what is that next step? That's where fighting sort of those internal thoughts really had to come into play. Because a lot of what I realized over time is that it was not just me fighting me, but it was me fighting that image of what I thought a scientist is. And I had to work through and kind of demystify what does it mean to be a scientist, engineer, et cetera? What is it to be in a STEM field? Is it the person that's in the lab coat, and is it that vision that you're taught, maybe you see in the book and at an early age? And what's the big range that can exist? And so as I got into college, that was something that, I'm still working through, but that's something that I think throughout my career and school, I've had to sort of work through, that it doesn't mean that you have to fall into this little box and define yourself as this one, sort of the stereotype. you can be in a STEM field, you can be a scientist if that's what you want to be. You just have to put the work into it. And, and so I'll wrap this up by saying that at the Science Center, a big part of my job as, exhibit project manager, I work with this amazing group of just creative people across disciplines, scientists, engineers, artists, humanities, we have writers, curators, etc. And the one thing that I love is that we are constantly advocating for science in a way that we want to spark that curiosity. We want that aha moment, if you will, of people when they come onto the floor. And so if we can just get those little moments to spark curiosity and interest, I feel like we've done our job. And so that sort of childhood sort of awe, we want to keep that in people as they mature.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Devin. Elena, would you like to add to that? What sort of advice would you give to someone who is thinking about pursuing a career in STEM or STEAM?
It's hard to follow that from Devin. I agree with so much of that. I was thinking in listening to the other panelists in here, like, how would I condense down, what does it mean to be a scientist and going into STEAM? And they have to do with skill sets and identities. So, a first thing is that visual identity and fitting in. And that has been a very big thing for me. So I really want to speak to underrepresented minority students in this answer, because I spent a lot of time trying to show the field that I was a good scientist by adopting characteristics of the dominant group within geology, which tends to be white and male. In geology, it's very outdoorsy oriented because we're studying outside. And so there's a lot of, rock climbing and mountain biking and ski, extreme sports and this sort of culture. And that's really not how I grew up. And so I already felt like I couldn't be as outdoorsy, even though I voluntarily jump out of helicopters now. It took me a while to get there, but those things didn't come naturally to me. And so my way of trying to fit in was to sort of whitewash and erase the ethnicity from me and identify more with, well, I'm actually I'm white and I'm Hispanic. So I tended to prefer one over the other. And what I learned along the way is that you can't hide anyway. And you feel like you're living not out of your integrity when you do compromise one part of your personality to fit in somewhere else. And so instead of having this mindset where I must fit in there, that is not inclusive, right? That is just, that's a little bit of diversity. That's a seat at the table, but it's not an influence of what's happening at the table. That's not what we're going for. My advice is to bring your whole self, your culture, your identity, your ancestors, your history, and your experience. Because what we want to go for is not just seeing color across the table, it is changing the way that we think and problem solve by the ideas and the experiences that we all bring. That's what I think we're going for. And you can't do that if you don't bring your whole authentic self into the way that you show up in your lab, in the field, in the workplace. And so that sort of a sense of identity, I think is really important. And I want to encourage you to embrace that and to bring it with you. And it helps it become easier for all of the rest of us. The other part is the skill set of being a scientist. And I'm so glad that this is moving towards STEAM, because I always felt conflicted about my interests in life. I loved science. I was always curious, and that's so important. It still drives me now. Which nature show am I going to watch tonight? Those sorts of things that still stuck with me. The skills in the lab, the skills in the field, the writing, there are people and classes and things that can help you develop those along the way. Don't let that, it's the curiosity, it's the creativity. That's what we talk about when we say what we value in a scientist, but sometimes we don't actually teach that in the coursework. I was interested in theater. I did lighting design. I went to college on a lighting design scholarship and then had to sort of abandon that because you can't really do that full time, and geology. I do dancing. I love to draw. I didn't know what to do with those other things, but that sort of creativity, the idea of performing on stage, it really helps when you give talks at national conferences, when you have stage presence, all of those skills are useful in the way to problem solve. So I would say, keep those other things about your interests in those skill sets because they're very useful, even if they are not considered traditional. So those are my two main bits of advice for pursuing that career. And then also the last one is that it's not a linear chain of dominoes, that if you don't hit this one in the front, that there's no chance of hitting the other side. What I'm doing right now for research, I had no idea that I would be doing when I set out for tenure. I was open to those other opportunities and the curiosities that got me, quote, off track. But now I'm doing interdisciplinary work and things I never thought of. And I just let myself be taken on that journey. And so I want to encourage everybody to not fall victim to the domino mentality about careers. You will be doing great things that you don't even know, like those things might not even exist right now, what you're doing later. And so be ready for that adventure and be open to it.
Love it. Thank you so much. Amazing. Ann, would you like to add to that?
I try to make it a point not to follow someone like Elena, but I have to say, when both Elena was talking and also Devin, you can't really see it, but the whole pigeonholed and stereotype, I had written down these exact words in my notes in terms of, what, kind of topics I want to hit. And I feel like, and it's still somewhat true in our culture now even, but like people see that there's a dichotomy. You are either STEM, which means I have a stereotype. I have the white lab coat. I have the thing. I look a certain way and I act a certain way. I certainly don't have blue fingernails. I certainly don't, talk about Marie Kondoing things. I had an experience in a recent meeting. The 3 female colleagues were all like, yeah, Marie Kondo. And the guys were like, what are you? Anyway, so if you are STEM, you're this. Whereas if you're arts and humanities, it's lighter weight. It's something, and it's not a dichotomy. I loved what, Elena was saying about bringing the one to the other, having stage presence, understanding like we finally at JPL are really getting serious about human systems integration, where it's like, it's not just the machine, it's the people in the machine and the processes, and all these things are important, but your traditionally trained STEM people would be like, well, if I just, build a machine or I build a tool in Excel, everything will fall out. And so I think that thing, when people are thinking about STEM, a lot of times they tell me, well, I don't really like math, which I don't really like math. That's not like, well, I don't like math, so therefore, I cannot do this. And it's like, there's so many different questions in STEM that have nothing necessarily to do with math. It's a tool, just like, dancing is a tool, using the body, just like art is a tool to get concepts across to people. It's just, these are just tools in the toolbox. And I really love that. One of the things that I love about STEAM is this idea that there is this spectrum of stuff, people who are the most innovative often are creative in other ways. It's not just that they're linear thinkers. So yeah, that whole thing, don't pigeonhole, well, I'm either STEM or I am something other than STEM. And if I'm STEM, I look like this and I act like this. If I am humanities, I look like this and I look like this, because that's not true. You're putting yourself in a box and you're allowing other people to put you in a box too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Rebecca, would you like to add anything to that? And then we're going to try and get a couple of minutes for a couple questions from the audience as well. And then we'll keep going.
Just pass it on to the questions because I would love to hear from people. I mean, this has been fantastic so far.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Anybody have any questions? How about a hand raise? I can't see everybody on my screen.
Type in the chat.
Notify me. Do we have any questions in the chat? Let's see. Lots of thank yous. The audience is loving this. I think the inspiration is just like through the roof right now.
Well, I'll add some other things then if there's nothing imperative right now. So we know that diverse teams are more successful. And this is true in nature as well. If you don't have a diverse environment, your community in nature is not going to be successful either. So it is the key to success. And from that, make sure you speak up. And so it's easy, you want to just sit in the back and blend in and not make yourself known too much if you're a little nervous about it. But the whole thing about these diverse teams is that you have to have a voice in that. And if your voice is missing, the team is not going to achieve in the same way. So make sure you speak up. Your opinion is important. Even if you don't feel like you know all of the answers, or, people get nervous about speaking up in large meetings, especially, but know that your voice is important to being successful, and your team will not be successful without you.
Absolutely. And we do have a question that came in through the chat. What advice would you give, and this is from Kylie Vanderson, what advice would you give to someone who never felt there was a place for them in STEAM? Who would like to take that, panelists?
I'll just say, there's so many dimensions to that. It's hard to know where to start with that, but I'll just address it from the perspective that, if it's the sciencey side, that like other panel members have talked about, there are more things than just sitting in a chair and doing calculations. I mean, it really does take a lot of creativity. There's so much creativity in science, and it often isn't given credit. So if that's a place that you don't feel like you fit, there is a place for you in STEAM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll add to that. And I agree with what Rebecca said. I think, when you don't feel like there's a place for you, sometimes you have to show people that there are other paths, and that we need to widen the space. Depending on how you're asking that question, it could feel sometimes, like we were noting before, that you don't fit a certain mold, or you're not sort of feeling comfortable with sort of the status quo of how things are done, maybe the process. And sometimes it's really nice to suggest new and creative and inventive. And I hear the word creative, and that is key. I completely agree. Creativity is something that is invaluable, and something that please bring to the table. So if indeed you don't feel like there is a place, or there hasn't been a place made, if you feel confident, and please do, create it, or show that person next to you how they can, how you can be of value, because you have something that is completely valuable to the situation. And perhaps it doesn't look like what you've seen, but that's a good thing, because we're constantly widening the field, not just in, as you were saying, our diversity, and and one thing to just kind of stray on that, diversity, not just in race and ethnicity, which is very important, not just in gender, which we see wonderful, intelligent women on the panel that are showing, but also in ability. We're talking about diversity across a vast spectrum. And so we need to see things in a bit broader way. And sometimes when we are so used to something, we can get used to doing it the same way over and over, but it doesn't mean that's the right way or the only way. So.
Wonderful. We've got a incredible question that I definitely want to pose. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. I want to ask this one first to the panel. And this is from Luann Rocha. Sometimes people feel threatened by the diverse voice and try to disrespect the diverse voice. How do you feel as women scientists dealing with these individuals who disrespect you and disregard your opinions? How do you deal with that?
Can I take that one?
Absolutely.
This is a great question, and it speaks to a lot of experiences that I've had. So one thing, it will be common, and one strategy, I have to read the room and see who's in there, and if there are other people that are like me, because it really changes the way that I respond to those questions or responses. Mm-hmm. So the notion of code switching, where you can answer a question in one vernacular and vocabulary. There is a language of equity and diversity within academia. but sometimes using that language will get a defensive response from others. So learning the language well enough that you are speaking the principles without actually saying the buzzwords. Learn to ask questions in response to questions. To ask people to be more articulate and explicit about, what do you mean by that? Or what are you assuming by that? And when you can turn around and answer with questions in a dispassionate way, I've had to work on fixing my face for like the whole time that I've been in STEM. And so, you know, having that sort of measured response, it takes extra energy. We shouldn't have to do it. But really, it's the people that want to change and are asking questions. Those are the people that we can affect with our answers. We cannot really change the minds of the unwilling and the people that are dug in. So the progress that we must make involves changing the minds of people that can be changed. And the other progress sometimes comes one funeral at a time. And so deciding which battles that you're going to fight and whose mind is worth changing and how to have the energy to engage that, how to have other people in the audience have your back. Allyship is complicated and it's difficult. Speaking up in the moment rather than in the hall afterwards where no one else has to hear them. You know, finding those allies so that you don't continually have to do the work, but asking those questions repeatedly. And the argument of like, well, there's so few of, you know, this group of people, you know, it's not a valid number of people to be concerned with, you know, using the low numbers to argue for why those voices should be invalidated. So pointing out the logical flaws in that. It's a lot of work. You shouldn't have to do it. I shouldn't have to do it, but I do it anyway. And once you do more and more of it, it becomes more natural. And hopefully there'll be a point someday where there'll be many people in that room so that you don't have to be the only one leading that discussion and taking on that sort of unnecessary critique.
Excellent.
Yeah, I just want to, this is Ann, I just wanted to highlight that because I hear, you know, from employees of mine, you know, that they have experiences and the importance of calling it out in the moment, not just, you know, oh, wow, you know, now I have to sit back because of whatever, and not just, well, that didn't seem right. You know, I always ask, were there other people in the room? Were there people that weren't saying anything or whatever? Because we all have to make this happen. And some part of it is having leaders that are more diverse. And so they're more aware of it. But, you know, in the interim time, you know, enlisting the people in the room, I love what Elena said about, you know, ask question, I'm sorry, what did you mean by that? You know, could I clarify something for you? But being pointed about it, and it is tiring. And then it does make you immediately think, wait, maybe I was wrong. Maybe the imposter syndrome, right? Well, maybe you know what, you just have to bluster through and, you know, say the thing that you're going to say, look at people in the room, make eye contact with people that you know would agree with you. And, you know, Bob, don't you agree that this would be so? Like, you know, actually enlisting them, don't let them be sort of passive, you know, party to whatever the disrespect is happening.
Love it. Amazing. I also like that, Elena, you mentioned code switching, and we've got quite a few anthropology students and some anthropologists here, and we know about code switching, don't we? So I like that you mentioned that as well. Amazing point. Thank you so much. One last question from the chat that came in from Rachel Rangel. What advice would you give for someone who is afraid of entering a field with fewer, more competitive jobs? So fewer, but more competitive jobs.
You will never get in unless you apply for it. So go for it. That's what I would say at the outset. But it's a challenge, and you have to convince yourself that you are, you know, that your experience sets you up to be successful there. It's hard to maybe convince yourself of that, but if you don't do it, you won't get it. So you have to try it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
When I hear that question, I think about my experience. When I graduated with a bachelor's degree in a very theoretical science, And I realized after graduation that I didn't want to pursue it anymore. I liked physics a lot, but it wasn't me. I didn't want to go on and get a higher level degree. And I ran into the situation where it was like, well, you know, a lot of my classmates are going on to get higher level degrees, and what am I going to do? And, you know, I had to push through this idea of, well, if I'm not going on this academic, the professor route, what is my value and where do I go from here? One thing I can say for that is that getting a STEM degree is a great foundational degree that you will find out has a lot of application. And, you know, I'm here at a science center right now, and informal science education and communication, which is what I think of myself as doing on a daily basis, is extremely valuable for our guests that come into the Science Museum who may not, you know, have background in formal science education, but it's up to us to have to take what the brilliant minds at universities, you know, come up with and what they find, and then translate that in a way so that the general public can enjoy it too. And so that you will find a position for you, regardless of, you know, if you think there may be less jobs within a certain area or field, but take a step out from that and branch out, apply, you know, look at it in terms of, if I look into maybe the communications world, how can I communicate science, for example? How can I apply it to maybe the art field? My stint, my year stint when I worked at Warner Brothers was because after getting out of my undergraduate degree, I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do science. Maybe, you know, study it and research it and be a research analyst. Maybe what I want to do is I want to create it on film and work for the Discovery Channel and be, you know, I wanted to be a visual effects compositor, which is actually what my husband does. But I was thinking, you know, I need to broaden this because I know that, again, don't block your chances before you give yourself a chance. If you're interested in something, my entire vision that propelled me for most of my degree was I loved studying Mars, period. If you look at anything around my office, anything, I'm looking at the backgrounds of so many of your Zoom windows. I was so fascinated by Mars. I didn't care at the moment what exactly the job was going to be when I got out. I just wanted to learn and get as close to these amazing people that do this amazing Mars research as I could. So my advice, I think, throughout this entire panel has been just go for it. Just go for it and put sound plan together. And if you're interested in it, don't talk yourself out of it. Just figure out avenues to sort of meander through and get close to what you really want to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We are out of time and there's a ton of questions that's coming through. So I'd like to propose that if it's okay, I can have, I'll drop my email in the chat. And if you have questions that you didn't get answered or if something comes up later, by all means, email me. And if it's okay with our panel, I'd like to be able to contact you with questions for our audience, if that's cool. Yes?
Definitely.
Thank you so much. What an honor, what a pleasure. I think everyone here is feeling very inspired by this discussion. Thank you so much. Suzanne, would you like to close this out?
Definitely, I would like to echo many thanks. It's very useful to think about these things, very inspirational. I also want to thank Britt for organizing this, and she's sort of the brainchild here. And it was really wonderful. You know, so thank you very much for your time. I know in the breakout sessions, some of the students may, you know, come and interact with some of our guests, or just continue to ask these questions and share and discuss with each other, you know, along the way. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for everything. Thanks.
Thank you. Newt, do you want to say anything to the panel and to David and the team?
Yeah, I'm again, thank you so much. It's amazing to see what kind of comments you have. There's Bruce Kogan saying that the panelists should go on tour. I think we may be the agent now, Joe, because we assembled just a phenomenal panel. Thank you so much, and I think this really has inspired many of our students in the audience here. Just judging the number of questions, there's more questions coming up, and we sure will follow up with you, and we appreciate you spending time with us today. Joe.
Thank you again, everyone. I've opened up the breakout rooms. If you have the latest version of Zoom, you should be able to just go in and out of them. If you can't, just come talk to me and I could send you to a breakout room if needed. As the fellows get settled in their rooms, I just want to plug stuff. So make sure to, our PR manager said, you better do this. So make sure to follow us. Go to our website, arcs.center, our LinkedIn, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So we need more followers. Come check out what we're doing. We're constantly posting and sharing all the successes that we have. Every second and fourth Friday of the month, our ARCS fellows and students do presentations. So there's a Zoom link that you can grab from one of us, or you can register for it. Go to arcs.center events for more info, or contact myself or Britt. But every second and fourth Friday, our students are presenting. It's coming up this Friday, so a couple days from now. And then we're going to start a speaker series where we're going to do a gab and grub. So we'd love for STEM or STEAM professionals or industry leaders that just want to hang out with our fellows and our student teams. This is coming up soon, so other students are welcome to join, but really this is a call if anybody wants to come in and be a part of this. Just want to thank you for considering it. And finally, the breakout rooms, the students are heading over there now, but this is the order of the rooms. There's 4 rooms. The moderator's name is just their last name up there, but feel free to jump in and out again. And then myself and Newt will be in this room answering any questions, and I'll be directing people if they can't get into breakout rooms. But David McBride, Rebecca Gottlieb, Elena Miranda, Ann Devereaux, and Devin Waller, thank you again for your time and taking the afternoon to be here, and everybody else who was involved in making this happen. I know there are a lot of emails going around, everybody at NASA and JPL throughout the months and the semesters that have been participating and helping our students. I just want to send a big thank you to everybody. And it's not over. Go to the breakout rooms, check out our student work. This is our cohort, this is our group. And I'll be able to answer any questions out here if you have any. So thank you again, everyone. And then, yeah, shoot me a message if you can't get into a breakout room, and this is where I start to do traffic control. So Newt, maybe you can chat a little bit while I do this.
Yeah, so yeah, if anybody have any questions, or yeah, please put them in the chat box and ask now, and I'll be happy to help address them. These are really amazing students who have done great work, and I hope you can go to all or some of them. And yeah, please let us know.
Gage, are you here? What room are you supposed to be in? 2, gotcha.